I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Rippin' Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rippin' Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness, this is the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live from a secret cave hidden deep within the wilderness of Tennessee. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup. We're tearing through the atmosphere. And we're tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, July 28th, 2022. Haha, the Freedom Flame series, baby. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue our conversation on communism. That's right, as we begin to discuss the 10 planks of communism. We're going to go over the Marxist beliefs as well as the Bill of Rights and what it says about our rights to private property and whether or not we have private property at all. All that and more coming up here in just a moment, but first, let's go ahead and see who all we have out here in our YouTube chat rooms, both on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole as well as the DarkWolf's Den Show YouTube channel. How you guys doing out here tonight? Got quite a few of you guys in the house, like JoJo's checking in at the top of each of the chat rooms. Glad to see you, JoJo. Michael Fontaine says, is it really yours, though, if you're paying taxes? That, my friend, is a very, very good point, and a question that I don't really have the answer to. So, I'm going to move on. Glad to see everybody here. Maggie's Ace, it's a pleasure. Games people play. Good to see you, my friend. I've been watching you guys play some games over on the TikTok. That's been pretty fun to watch. Rippin' Rabbit himself, AJ, glad to see you, sir. Michael Fontaine jumping into the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Maggie's Ace says, hi, everyone. Hi, Maggie. It just cut off again, so I'm over here for a bit. Yeah, if the show cuts off on either channel that you're on, I would just suggest refreshing the page, and it should come right back. It says we have a good streaming condition here, so yeah, I do apologize. That is YouTube at YouTube's best, as we know. But over in the Darkwolf's Den Show, JJ saying, hey, Jay, how you doing? My friend Saturnian Sun says, worldwide Satanist means there is no private property. You may be right, Saturnian. You'll have to stick around for the rest of the show and see how close to right you are with that prediction. Michael Fontaine, also in the Darkwolf's Den Show, says, I'm here. Or am I? That's right, Michael. Maybe or maybe not. It depends on which dimension you find yourself in at the time, right? We've also got Deranged Lunatic, a.k.a. DL, over here. Glad to see you, Deranged Lunatic. Always a pleasure. Would you guys like a joke? How about a good quick joke? Jay has given us one here. He says, wife, do you want dinner? Husband, sure, what are my choices? Wife, yes and no. That's your only choices, yes and no. So there you go. Pretty cute joke, Jay. I like that. I appreciate that, my friend. Always a good laugh. Chris Spivey, if I pay my land off, I will still owe the $1,500 a year, or the Men in Black take it. Yes, that may very well also come up tonight. We'll just have to stick around once again and find out. Dark Wolf on YouTube just abruptly redirected to another video channel. I deleted that one and re-entered Dark Wolf. Yeah, they don't like when we go live. We tell too much of the truth. It really, really does not sound sound good. Sounds like Tara, says Chris. You guys remember Chris Spivey joined us just a couple weeks ago on the air. Really, really great information came from him. If you guys missed that show, go back and check out, I believe it was last Wednesday's episode. And once again, it's always a pleasure to hang out with every last one of you guys here in the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Also, we are, and I'll probably mention this a number of times, we are going to go over to the Rippin' Rabbit Hole later like we did last episode. So do make sure you follow the link in both the chat rooms, and you're also signed on to that chat room over there, as it will be the only way to interact with the show at one point in the show. And whether you are listening on YouTube or around the world on Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network at the rippinrabbithole.com, or of course on the replay on BitChute or Rumble, we're glad to have every last one of you guys along for the ride. That's right. And what a ride it's going to be. By the way, do make sure that you have went over to the rippinrabbithole.com, RIPONRABBITHOLE.com, because at the last 15 minutes of the show, at the 45-minute mark, we are going to cut the YouTube feed and will only be available for the rest of the show at the rippinrabbithole.com. So you want to go over there, you want to click on the top left-hand corner box, the first box you see there. It'll have tonight's show graphic there, and you click on that. It'll take you to the page with the radio player, so you can continue to listen to the show, and you can also chat along over there with the rest of the Rippin' Rabbits in our private chat room that is not as censored as YouTube is. But before we get to all that, of course, we've got two more fun little segments to do, the first of which we call Today in History. On this day in 1868, the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was declared in effect. The amendment guaranteed due process of law, an amendment that will be very important in our discussion tonight. And that happened on this day in 1868, and that is today's segment of Today in History.
Say what?
In our quote of the day today, folks, we bring you more wise words from President Joe Biden. He says, and I quote,
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him...
It's all right, Joe. You just missed it by that much. But don't worry. None of us can find a good single word to sum up your America. It takes a number of words that can't be said on live radio. Anyways, folks, that is today's segment of
Say what?
As a matter of fact, to me, his America is starting to look more like a communist regime than the free United States of America. Go ahead and put a 1 in the chat room if you would agree with that statement, 2 if you would disagree with that statement. But one way that I can tell is the way that they are trying to centralize everything into the government trying to take control of everybody's lives in every single aspect, for the government to have all the central authority and power. This is a very, very bad thing in my opinion, as this leads to the government being able to dole out what it sees necessary by proportion, what is equitable. There's a word we hear a lot nowadays. What is equitable by means of the government itself, and what is decided by basically a bunch of bureaucrats that are not in elected positions. This, as a matter of fact, is two of the standard points of private property when it comes to communism. Now, first though, we do need to define private property. Private property is defined under the Wikipedia anyway, as the ownership of property by non-governmental legal entities, everyday citizens, you, me, and your average Joe. non-governmental. Private property is distinguishable from public property, which is owned by a state entity, and also different from collective or cooperative property, which is owned by a group of non-governmental entities. Okay, this makes sense so far. So it's property owned by you and I, opposed to the government owning government buildings like the courthouse, right? It has a whole different aspect to it. You can buy your land, that is your land. You have certain rights on that land. However, the communists do not believe in that. They believe in social ownership. They believe in centralizing everything. So as we learned last week, the 10 planks of communism to enact communism in a country. Plank number 1 that we will be covering tonight, of course, is private property. And they had a lot to say on private property. As a matter of fact, Marx himself is quoted as saying, "The theory of communism may be summed up in a single sentence: the abolition of private property." Nobody owns the property anymore. You do not have rights to your land, to your house anymore under communism. And he goes on to back the quote up by saying, "You are horrified at our intending to do away with private property. But in your existing society, private property is already done away with for 9/10 of the population." Is that true? Is that true? You think that property may be done away with already for 9/10 of the population? We will get to that more in the second half of the show, as a matter of fact. But let's go ahead and see exactly what their views on private property is. So the Communist Manifesto has 4 views on private property. Number 1 is centralization. Everything must be centralized to the government itself. Everything belongs to the government. There is no single ownership anymore. All the power is given to the few, in quote, authority, end quote, over all of the rest of the citizens. And by doing this, they gain what is called social ownership. So the government says, we're going to give it back to you in such a way that we will dole it out as we see fit. Now, who decides what is fit? Of course, bureaucrats in non-elected offices, right? Who else would see such a thing, right? And then we are going to make sure that you have your equitable amount, your equal portion under the law. So then you will be given your little 2 acres and whatever you are allowed to have by the government. This is your basic view in communism of private property. Now, this, in my opinion, is not good. And what they want to do is they want to own all of the resources in order to own all of the ability to manufacture, to be in control of everything. They aim to substitute private property and the means of production for public property. Socialists and communists generally agree that private property relations limit the potential of productive forces in the economy when productive activity, becomes a collective activity where the role of the capitalist becomes redundant, apparently. Socialists generally favor social ownership either to eliminate the class distinction between owners and workers and as a component of the development of the post-capitalist economic system. So to again put this back into a little more layman's terms, folks, they want your property. You are not allowed to own anything. Once again, I believe Klaus Schwab put it best: you shall own nothing and you shall be happy. Right? That is exactly what I remember him saying. And this is a keystone of the American way, is to own your own property. People own their farms. People make money off of owning a farm. If you have the freedom to own your own property, you have the freedom to make decisions of what goes on on your property. You have the freedom to prosper. Unlike in a communist regime where you're only allowed to prosper as far as the government allows you to go. You can only make so high of wages. You can only do what the government allots you to do, and property is none the less different. Now, let's be clear, they don't want your toothbrush. They do not want to allot you your basic goods. As a matter of fact, under communism, the basic goods is more so or less a right because they want the worker to be happy. They want to make one class, and that is they end up making two classes, but they want to make one class that is the worker class, of course, and everybody is going to be able to have your own toothbrush. You'll have your own pen and paper. You'll have your own basic needs met. But that's as far as it goes. And all those, once again, are given upon government allotment. Only what the government allows you to have. This is why the idea of social social welfare systems have such a hard impact when they are increased in a country, because it only leads to the breakdown of the capitalist way in the free market, and leads to more of a socialist, communist giving allotment to somebody to not work, for instance, giving allotment to somebody just to live and survive, right? Now, I'm not saying Social Security, for instance, is a bad thing. It's actually one of the few social programs enacted by a socialist Democrat. That's right, folks. That was enacted by a socialist here in this country. It is one of the things that has worked. But then again, on the other side of things, is it good to be dependent on the government? What if one day the government decides you no longer need to get your Social Security? You no longer need to receive your pension fund, your compensation, your SSI, whatever the case may be, your disability payment. The government has that power, right? Surprising, isn't it? Even here in America, the government would have that ability because it's a welfare system. It's a government payment you're given. Food stamps. I've used myself food stamps along the way in life. I'm sure we've all had that means, but that is also a socialist program put in by a socialist Democrat. Now, private property as a means of production, say you have a business. Well, you're no longer allowed to own your business. You're no longer allowed to own your factory. You're no longer allowed to have ownership of anything that could allow you to prosper further in the world. You're not able to build anything you'd like. You're not able to create, and most important of all, it is a God-given right. Here in America, anyway, it is a cornerstone of freedom. And if you take away that freedom, the freedom to decide that you want to buy this piece of property, that you want to live here or live there, the freedom to decide what you want to do in life, what you're allowed to do in life, that is completely taken away when you take away the private property from somebody. That takes away your comfort in knowing that what you have paid for is yours, knowing that you have full ownership and nobody can take that away from you. However, under communist, the social group has the ownership of the land. They can decide tomorrow that your house needs to be a part of a park, and guess what? You no longer have a house. Oh, well, tough luck. Keep working that job that the government told you to work, and they'll allot you another one eventually, if you're lucky, right? That's if you didn't argue about it to begin with. And now back to the factory owners and the means of production. This is what is the most important to communists. They want to own and centralize all means of production. In other words, all the corporations, all the businesses, all the factories, everything is run under a government running. Now, this, of course, is never going to end well. It stagnates the ability to create. It stagnates the ability to expand, the ability to grow and think and explore more ideas. You are stuck in this consistent loop of creation, and usually it turns into nothing more than a war machine in the end, as the communist regime ends up becoming very militant usually, and using most of its property that it does use for means of production, for means of war production. Therefore, the civilian population is never really civilian, are they? A lot of the communist countries will make you be a part of the military, at least for a period of time in your life, if you are a male citizen of that country. Again, your allotment in life is given by the government. You're not going to say, no, I'm not going to be in the military, because they will say, no, you're not going to live anymore, or you're not going to be able to have a house to live in, or you're not going to be able to access your funds anymore, or any means that the government wants to do, because the government has full centralized control of all means of production. And in other words, if you don't play their game, you don't get to use the things that they produce. They are the sole producers of everything, the government entity itself, in a communist regime. Now, does this sound familiar, like all the companies doing the same exact thing because the government says to do so? Does this sound like something that has been happening in the recent past to a lot of us, or something we've noticed, I would say? I'm not sure. It just seems to me that seems quite familiar, that a lot of these companies, as a matter of fact, seem to be going all in the same, what's the word I'm looking for, towing the same party line, a party line that seems to not be working out for them very well, thankfully, in America, but a party line just the same that goes to show that it could already be happening here in the United States, right? How close are we in the United States to this first plank of communism taking over our lives? We're going to dig much, much deeper into that in the second half of the show. But before we do run out of time here, we're almost at the bottom of the hour. I want to remind everybody to hop on over to the rippinrabbithole.com. That is RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. Over there, you're going to click on the top left-hand corner. The tonight's show, you're going to get a new page with a chat box as well as the radio player, so you can continue to listen along, because about halfway through the next half of the show, we are going to cut the YouTube feed, and it will no longer be available on YouTube, as we will be able to speak just a little more freely for the last part of the show. And who knows, we may drop in to the live audience area and the backstage lounge even, maybe, and pull some of you guys in if you have anything you would like to say. We'll see how that goes. But if you want to be a part of that, of course, or even a part of the chat room over there where we'll be interacting, do make sure that you hop on over once again to the rippinrabbithole.com, RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. While you're over there, also make sure you sign up for your backstage VIP pass. That is going to get you access to everything on the site, more than just able to chill and listen. And you will come up as anonymous in the chat until you do create a backstage pass, which is free, always has, and always will be, folks. I just don't want you guys to miss any of this important conversation as we continue to discuss the first plank of communism, the ownership of private property, or the lack thereof when it comes to a communist regime. You will own what the government says you will own. You will be doled out due to your equity in life. And again, that's what else is scary, is another word we keep hearing a lot in this country here lately, it seems to me anyway, is that word equity again. And it only goes back to a class and a race war, a race on race, or class on class, I should say. I shouldn't even say race. A class on class war that they are trying to start. They want this war between the bourgeoisie and the proletarian, you and me and them. They want us to pick up rocks and sticks. They want us to show how angry we are at them. They want us to make a move. It would play right into their hand, which is most likely one reason that everybody has stayed quite calm during this whole time. But be aware, folks, what is around you. Watch when it comes to private property. Watch the laws that the government tries to enact. Look at the different rules they try to put in place. Watch the movements they make, especially when it comes to private property. This is one thing that they are going to try to get their hands on as easily and as quickly as they can. And as we're going to find out, that might be a little easier, unfortunately, than a lot of us may think. But we're going to get into all that here in just a moment. However, we have come to the bottom of the hour, so we've got to go ahead and take a network break right here. My name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you're listening to the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show Freedom Flame Series, the private property plank 1 of the communist agenda, exclusively on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the RippinRabbitHole.com, home of the Freedom Flame. We'll be right back with the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show after these messages. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, Jerry Hicks on a Thursday night. Hi everyone, it's AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying tonight's look of the Darkwolf's Den Show, Private Property? I know I am. If you are and you haven't done so already, please make sure to hop on over to our website, RippinRabbitHole.com. That's RippinRabbitHole.com. There you can sign up for your exclusive backstage VIP pass. It's going to give you unfiltered access down the rabbit hole to where the conversation continues after the show. Now, normally we're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. And of course, we simulcast on YouTube. However, things are going to be a little different this weekend, as we will not be simulcasting on YouTube for Saturday and Sunday nights. I will have more information to share with you tomorrow night, Friday, July 29th, as Freedom Flame Fridays continues to ignite the conversation of freedom by exploring a different synonym each week. And tomorrow night, no exception, as we explore empowerment. Come along with us as our guest panel assembles to discuss just exactly what empowerment means in 2022 and directly how it pertains to our freedoms and liberties. In episode 9, as the Freedom Flame Fridays series continues all summer long, we have assembled a fantastic guest panel that's going to take the discussion directly to you tomorrow night, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your family's friends to be here. Freedom Flame Fridays. From now until the end of the summer, episode 9. You know what? Maybe we'll extend it. Maybe we'll continue it on through, well, stay tuned. And stay tuned all weekend long as we have an entire schedule of fun activities, planned, unique activities, as we will not be after tomorrow night, simulcasting on YouTube this weekend. So if you want to listen to us, you're going to have to hop on over to RippinRabbitHole.com. We'll return back to tonight's topic, private property, part of Jerry Hicks' return with his Freedom Flame series. We'll return you back now to Jerry Hicks and the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show as he howls at private property. You're listening to the Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, home of the Freedom Flame, rippinrabbithole.com.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, July the 28th, 2022. Haha. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you, folks. If you missed the first half, we have went over a comprehensive idea of what the Communist Manifesto says about private property. And in the second half here, we're going to get more into what the Bill of Rights and what the American way has and capitalism and free market has to say about private property. You may be just a little shocked, I don't know, but before we dive into that, folks, do remember one more time, if you are not already, go on over to the Rippin' Rabbit Hole, the RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. Then you're going to click on the top left-hand square that has tonight's show graphic in it. And it's going to bring up a page where you'll be able to use the radio player and chat along with the rest of the rabbits back there, because we will be cutting the feed in about 10 more minutes or so. So do make sure that you are over there and you don't miss out on any of this important information. Now, in the United States, we have certain God-given rights granted to us by the Constitution of the United States of America, along with the Bill of Rights. The bill itself outlining what rights we really do have. Again, these are God-given rights. These are not privileges that can be taken by a government like a communist regime, right? These are granted to you under the Constitution. And the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, and we'll just go ahead and read it. The Fifth Amendment creates a number of rights relevant to both criminal and civil legal proceedings. In criminal cases, it guarantees the right to a grand jury and forbids double jeopardy and protects against self-incrimination. It also requires that due process of law be part of any proceeding that denies a citizen life, liberty, or property, and requires the government to compensate citizens when it takes private property for public use. Now, this taking of private property for public use is also called eminent domain. This may be something you guys have heard of. This is land acquisition, a compulsory purchase or acquisition or resumption under the power of the state. So they can come in at any time and say, we want your land. Here in America, they can do this, folks. They can come in and say, we're taking your land and we're going to offer you a fair amount. Now, the person that decides the fair amount rarely decides a fair amount, right? They decide an amount that's usually way below market value. And then they offer it to this person. And if the person does not take the money, they can still lose their home. That's right. Now, they must be taken to court, and it must be done under due process of law, which is also outlined in the 14th Amendment that was accepted as ratified on this day in history. You remember, I told you the 14th Amendment would come in to be very important later in the show, and here we are. No state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. That is read in the 14th Amendment. So once again, they have to be taken to court, and it has to be done under due process but the state has won in a number of private property cases under eminent domain. So it begs to question, in this country, is Marx right? Do only 1/10 of the population actually own the property of this country? Do we really own private property here? Or is that more of a myth that we're told, a magician's choice, if you will? The illusion of owning private property until the government decides otherwise. That isn't quite the way the Constitution was originally set up. That sounds more to me like a slide right down the road into communism. I don't know about you guys, but it seems when it comes to private property, we may be a little closer to the communist aspect of it than the free market aspect of it. I wonder all the time, folks, just how close we are to slipping into communism in this country. We are a whole lot closer, it looks like to me, than even I would like to admit. And as we continue to go through this series, we're going to find we're a lot closer than a lot of you probably would even believe either. And there's yet another danger to owning private property. The ability for the government to take your private property, I should say, in yet another way, and that is through property tax. That's right, think about that. So to say that the government decided to raise the property taxes, perhaps to a point that was absolutely unpayable, what would happen? I'll tell you what would happen. They would come knocking on your door and they would foreclose on your home and the government would take it. Now, that is a very legal process that once again would have to be done through courts, but if the government says we're taxing you this much and you can't pay the taxes, you forfeit the property. Therefore, the government takes the property. Another way that the government could step in and literally steal it right out from under any property owner. Scary stuff, right? But that's the way it is. That is really what can happen in this country. So again, how much do you really have the right to private property? This is something that we as citizens need to turn around and start taking a look at and seeing if there's ways that we could change the system in which we are in right now. See if there's a way to stop the ability for eminent domain to come in and take one's land, the ability to stop the confiscation of land due to too high of property taxes. Say the government come in and decided your home was worth an exorbitant amount more than it's really worth, which raises the tax on it to an exorbitant amount than you're able to pay, and you have no choice. Now imagine if they'd done this to a whole town or a whole country. Now, this is why we really have to be involved, folks. This is the reason that we have to get out there and get involved in our school boards, get involved in our city councils, get involved as mayor, get involved in all of these aspects of the way the city and the world is being run. We have to take back over and put common sense back into the country, and it's not going to be done by trusting politicians that have lied to us over and over and over. We've seen what that has gotten us. We've gotten complacent in this country, and what we need to do is step back up to the plate, start being involved with our children's schools, start being involved with school boards, start being involved with decisions of the city, start understanding how the budget works, start seeing what is being hidden within these budgets, because I assure you, in a lot of cases, there's a lot of hidden stuff in these budgets that you do not know about. But before we wrap it up over here on YouTube, let's go ahead and check the YouTube chat rooms one more time and see what you guys are saying. It looks like the YouTube chat rooms have gone pretty quiet, actually. National Memorial Gardens is sending good thoughts from the UK. Thank you, my friend. We very, very much appreciate you. Good to see you. It looks like a majority of you have come on over to the rippinrabbithole.com and joined us over there, like Chris Spivey. Good to see you over here, my friend. Glad you made it. It says, something I didn't like Trump over. He loved eminent domain. Yeah, that definitely is a negative for me. I don't care who the president is or the one in charge. If you are for eminent domain, that is a little dangerous when it comes to freedom. If there's a new way, I'll be the first in line. It better work this time, Dave Mustaine. And that's the problem. Communism has failed every single time that it has been tried. It has failed not only horribly, but superbly horribly. And every time they say, we'll get it right this time, we'll fix it this time, we know what would happen last time, we know what went wrong, we'll do it right this time. And every time it fails that much more horribly. All right, guys, we have reached the point in the show where we're about to cut the YouTube feed, folks, and you'll only be able to hear the rest of the show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, the rippinrabbithole.com. If you would like to join us over there one more time, it is RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. And you're going to click on the top left hand square there that's going to have tonight's show graphic in it. You're going to take you to another page where you're going to hit the radio player, hit play, and chat along right with us, folks. We are excited to have every last one of you guys over there. We'll be interacting with that chat over there here in just a couple minutes, but we're going to cut the YouTube feed in 3, 2,